my name is Michelle.
And my name is Kyle. So here we're going to be making videos on YouTube and posting them to be teaching for us being former students to future students, talking about specifically sports science and sports exercise, but anything pertaining to science in general. So biology, psychology, any of that sort, all of this will pertain to that subject. I am interested in psychology very much, and that's probably what I'm going to be majoring in college, so it's perfect for me.
And I am majoring in biology, so this is super interesting to me.
So those are kind of the videos we're going to be going over. Today specifically, we're going to be talking about Welford's black box decision-making model and the psychological refractory period. And then later we'll be showing you a little demonstration test that you can apply to the decision-making process and just further apply it in your classroom.
Hello everyone, so I will be firstly discussing the black box model, and the black box model is something you can very easily remember very quickly. There's only really like 4 components to it, which is, as you can see, input, which goes towards your central nervous system. That's where all the processing occurs. You have an output, which is basically what decision you've made based on the input, and then back towards the input is another round of feedback, and the whole process happens over and over again. Welford's model of informational processing just goes into this like with a lot of depth. So as you can see, instead of just like central nervous system, it goes input, you have a sensation, you have the perception of that sensation, that goes towards your short-term memory and long-term memory. So that's kind of like how you make your decisions. Once you've made that decision, it goes into afferent organization, which is basically how you react to produce that decision in real life. And then the output, which is the effect of that decision. And once again, this goes back towards feedback, towards another input. So I'll go over this very quickly, just some of the components of Welford's model. So going into sensory first of all, that can be from interoceptors or exteroceptors, sensation that is perceived from your body or outside on your exterior. Perception, moving on to perception, we could talk about Sweat's 1964 signal detection theory, which really depends on how an individual really perceives a signal from outside based on the intensity of that certain signal. And he defines 2 separate, variables, which he calls D prime, which is basically how sensitive the individual is to that perception, and then C, which is the bias of that perception towards that specific action, which is basically the individual's state of arousal during that period of time. Of course, like after the input or whatever you've perceived, that goes towards your short-term memory and long-term memory, and that short-term memory, long-term memory helps you decide what to do in that situation. So when we talk about memory, we could look at Tolving. I think that's how you pronounce his name. 1985. And he has a lot of theories about the short-term memory, long-term memory, as well as this kind of like period in between where it requires rehearsal for that short-term memory to really come from the sensory information kind of realm. So he defines like space and time limits that occur with memory, that including the 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information that you can store in your short-term memory, as well as the selective attention and signal channel theory, which is basically saying that an individual can only perceive something one at a time unless they rehearse it. And that kind of goes into what Kyle will be talking about, which is PRP, psychological refractory period, where you have a little period in between.
Yeah, so we talked about a second ago, the psychological refractory period is when there's one stimulus introduced, and as you're still processing the first stimulus, a second stimulus is introduced. So the response time that it actually takes you to react to said stimuli is the psychological refractory period in the middle, and that's the time where you're going to slow down your response time because you have more stimulus now being introduced into your life. This can be most prevalently seen in texting and driving. If you're driving down the road and you have something happen on the street as you're driving, but you're also having a conversation on the phone, you will be a lot slower to react to that stimulus because you have multiple stimulus coming in at the same time. So that's your psychological refractory period. So now I'll demonstrate that psychological refractory period in an actual test. Called the alternate handball toss ball test. So I'll be talking about the handball toss test using a tennis ball and a wall. This test goes over your reaction time and your ability to process information, your ability to make decisions quickly when one stimulus is coming in and then a second stimulus is presented. That's called the psychological refractory period, better known as PRP, and we'll explain that more in detail in a little bit with some diagrams. Real quick, I'm going to go over the demonstration of the test. So I'm going to get a little bit of room here. So when you're doing this test, all you need is tennis ball and a smooth, solid wall. You're going to stand about 3 feet away from the wall. Toss the ball up, catch it with your opposite hand. Toss it up, catch it with your opposite hand, and it'll be an underhand toss every time. Pretty simple, and you just continue the process. So the idea of the test is as you're catching the ball, that's the stimulus coming in. You make a decision to catch the ball. The second stimulus is then you throwing the ball and catching again with the opposite hand, repeating over and over. So there's the decision making. You time yourself for 30 seconds, and the amount of throws you get based is on how good you are and how fast your reaction time is, how good your hand-eye coordination is. So between 20 and 30 throws in that 30-second period is about average. Anywhere from 30 to 35 is considered good. Anywhere above 35 throws and then catches is excellent. So go out and try it.
That's Kyle over there. Kyle!
I got it!
As you can see, Kyle caught the balls, which means he has pretty good, hand-eye coordination and also reaction time. And yeah, PRP. He probably focused on one thing and got confused at the second thing.
I was scared.
Sorry. But yeah, PRP in work. See, there is the black box model of input, central nervous system, and then output. Down is Wilford's model of information processing, all the stuff we went over, and then PRP, which Kyle went over. And as you can see, that little PRP is the little period between the two stimuluses and the two response. And that is all.